Serena Williams wrote in Vogue she never wanted to have to choose between tennis and a family. She said, "If I were a guy, I wouldn't be writing this because I'd be out there playing and winning while my wife was doing the physical labor of expanding our family. Maybe I'd be more like a Tom Brady if I had that opportunity." What? What exactly are you complaining about? You are considered the greatest female tennis player ever, and some may even consider you the greatest ever, male or female. You're 41, way past the normal age of a retired tennis player who still has played at a high level. You have a net worth of $260 million. So what are you whining about? And for the feminists out there, you even made a sexist comment saying that if you were a man, the wife would be doing the physical labor and expanding the family while you're out doing your thing. But from all actuality, haven't you done your thing? So please, just stop. Stop. Next one. This video is very disturbing, especially when the culprit represents an oppressed people. This man is an Israeli citizen, but he shows himself to be a racist with a contemptible act of hitting a female, a black female, on the head with a foreign object, including the despicable act of spitting at her. And I'm always appalled at someone who, if put in a situation where he is the minority who is approached by racist individuals and he were treated the same way he's treating her, he would be screaming foul. And how could someone treat him this way? Well, look in the mirror and hate yourself for the man you are. Enough said. Next one.
So unreal that you cannot even make it up. Former US President Donald Trump's wife passed away last month. There was a glitzy funeral service for her, where she was remembered as a woman who was adored by many. But guess where she was buried? In a gold-hued coffin at Trump's New Jersey golf club. You heard that right. Trump's former wife was buried in his golf club. I know it sounds weird, but that's where her grave lies, in a plot close to the first tee of the golf course with a rudimentary wreath and an engraved granite stone. So why is she buried there? It's because her grave could help Trump get a tax break. Tax code in New Jersey exempts cemetery land from all taxes. It is exempt from real estate and personal property taxes, as well as sales tax, inheritance tax, business tax, and income tax. This is a state where land taxes are very high, and it looks like Donald Trump may be using his former wife's grave to avoid a few taxes.
This video says all that needs to be said about this man, and yet people want to continue to follow him just because he says the things they want to hear. I'm sorry, but you got to be more of a man than that for me to follow you, and you have to be more of a person than that for me. Next video.
They're gonna let it go. That is woo! Look at that! Look at that! They're gonna let it go,
and they are gonna let it go.
I love it! I love it! Look at that! Oh my God!
Wow, that's ugly. That's really ugly. His nose is twisted and mangled. I want to know what the other guy looks like. No said. Next video. These stats are awesome. Imagine doing this in today's game, and with internet being available, I've come to realize he'll never be recognized for the player he should be recognized for. And that's a shame, because we have individuals who were born practically yesterday saying that Wilt played against carpenters and plumbers. But when you really look at the talent he played against were guys like the recently departed Bill Russell, the late Bob Lanier, the bruising Nate Thurmond, Willis Reed, and a young Lou Alcindor, or better known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in his latter years, or even Zelmo Beatty, who was no slouch either. And there were no more than at least the 9 other teams during the majority of his career, which meant that he went up against these guys at least 9 times apiece. And with only 10 teams in the league, mostly you were definitely going against the very best because of because of the limited number of players that were able to play. And it's funny how they say plumbers as a derogatory put down, but all across sports back then, many players had a second job in the off season to offset the lack of money they were not getting. So hats off to you, Will. Enough said. Next. Wow. Latasha Harlins would have turned 45 today. She was shot in the head by a Korean grocery store owner in 1991 over a juice. She was only 15 years old, and when police arrived, they found the $2 in her hand that she was going to use to pay for it. The owner was only given 5 years probation. Tupac said her name various times in his music. But I bring her up because tragedies like this are still prevalent today. Rest in peace, Latasha. Enough said. Next video.
Says, quote, classified documents relating to nuclear weapons were among the items FBI agents sought in a search of former President Trump's Florida residence on Monday. That's according to people familiar with the investigation. Now, this could elevate the concern over these documents in an enormous way. Joining us now is Washington Post intelligence and national security reporter Shane Harris. He's part of the team that broke this story. Shane, thank you so much for being with us. Just explain more what you and your team found here.
Well, what we understand is that among these classified documents that the FBI was searching for is documents related to nuclear weapons. Now, we're very clear in the story. We do not know whether that relates to U.S. nuclear weapons, the U.S. nuclear weapons arsenal or research, or information about the nuclear weapons of other countries. But what we do understand is that this information, which would in any instance be among the most tightly guarded secrets in the U.S. government, appears to have caused sufficient concern that it helped motivate this extraordinary search at the former president's home. And I think what this underscores is the degree to which law enforcement officials and others in the government were deeply concerned about the sensitive nature of the information that Donald Trump had at his personal residence. And we should also emphasize there is no plausible reason that experts can point to why a former president would need to have classified information of that significance at his home.
Yeah, it should be tightly guarded. But what you and your team reporting this out, Shane, reveal is also it wasn't tightly guarded at the White House either.
That's right. We've talked to former officials who served at senior levels in the intelligence community in the Trump administration, who said that it was routine that highly classified information was passed around and handled by people who did not have a need to possess it or to read it. People who did not have the appropriate security clearances, people who didn't have a need to know. That among this information, one former intelligence official told us that they routinely saw was signals intelligence. We're talking about things like intercepted communications, potentially of foreign leaders. That too is some of the most closely protected, guarded information. And the idea that it was flowing around freely among officials who didn't need to have it or didn't have the proper access to it starts to fill out a picture of just the kind of the sloppiness that many former officials say they saw in the Trump administration when it came to handling close protected secrets.
So Shane, one question that is being asked this morning, if the FBI believed or were seeking classified documents related to nuclear weapons at Mar-a-Lago, as you say, that would be so serious. The existence of those documents would be so serious. What took so long? When did they find out about these documents? Was it, when they knew about the 15 boxes months and months ago? Was it when they subpoenaed records? Why the search warrant?
Yeah, that's a great question. We still don't know precisely when they learned this. But if you look at the sequence of events of how this unfolded, we know that there was a subpoena that was issued to President Trump back in June which is essentially a request from the government that, saying, we think you have information, we need you to hand it back to us. It's a command of sorts, but it's asking nicely, if you want to think about it that way. It appears that this situation escalated, however, when President Trump, for, again, reasons we don't fully understand, did not return the information that the government made clear to him he needed to return. And so I think that also elevated the concern among law enforcement agents. Why is he not giving back the information that we think he has, that we're telling him he needs to get back to us? That in any event would cause significant concern if someone who had classified information in their possession was refusing to hand it back. When it's the former president, the political and the legal implications of that, we're seeing them play out right now. And we can see how extraordinarily that would complicate the situation.
Over the years has said, listen to this.
Have you seen what's going on in front of Congress? Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Horrible. Horrible.
The mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
When you have your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth, so they're not prosecuted, I think it's disgraceful.
But the character of Trump begged for this to happen. I know Fox News is having a fit, and Trump supporters are having a fit as well. Trump's presidency and campaign rails on the side of being unprecedented. His comments scream of it. We live in a world that invests in lies rather than the path of truth. Trump lies about the election, and his followers believe it 100%. Radio host Alex Jones spread lies about Sandy Hook, saying it was a hoax with paid actors. Republican Tim Scott deflected the questions of January 6th, and he sounded like a cop who shot a black person saying, let's wait for the results. Remember how people kept saying, give him time. He'll start to act presidential, meaning he would begin to act well-mannered and not be thin-skinned. Well, it never happened. And he became less thin-skinned to the point of you being his enemy if you don't agree with him, which segues into January 6th, because months before he stated that if he didn't win, then the election would have to be rigged, which led to the riot, which led to documents pertaining to his involvement being destroyed, which led to the FBI raiding the house of a president, which is unprecedented because it's never been done before. And for the simple reason that Trump is arrogant, uncouth, and a clown of a president with a very limited vocabulary. Enough said. All right, everyone, that's it for this week. Be sure to like or subscribe pertaining to whatever media outlet you're watching this from. So spread the news about this channel, and I hope to see you next week. Enough said.